Welcome to Perspectives on Men. I am your host, Warren Sinkowski, and in our first episode here, I'm speaking with two guests, Tai Chatur and Alex Ferrari, and I'll be introducing them and talking to them about men's issues. So Tai, Alex, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey.
Tai, it's great to have you here, and you have been taken on as the Executive Director for the Canadian Centre for Men and Families in Vancouver as of January of this year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. A couple of months into it now.
Excellent. Well, welcome. And can you please tell us a little bit about your role here as Executive Director and what your main priorities will be?
Yeah, for sure. So my main role is to organize and run the virtual center. Right now we have 3 programs coming out of Vancouver that we run all virtually. And the second part of what we're doing is hosting a campaign to open up our physical center, hopefully later on this year.
Excellent. And so I understand that CCMF has some physical centers offering services to men in the community in other parts of Canada. There's one in Toronto, and I believe there's one in Edmonton as well. Is that right?
It is in Calgary, and we also have one in York, London, Toronto, and Ottawa. So they're all over. It's about time we got one on the West Coast.
Yes, definitely. So Tai, going back a little bit, I wanted to just ask you a little bit about your background. So I understand you have a bachelor's and a master's in psychology. And can you tell us maybe a little bit about the studies that you've done and what you focused on during that time?
Sure, yeah. In my undergraduate degree, I did a little bit of research in cognitive psychology, so eyewitness testimonies, and that's really what inspired me to go down the forensic route, so understanding the world in between psychology and the criminal justice system. That took me to my graduate degree, which was in New York at John Jay College, Criminal Justice. So I did a lot of different research there, met a lot of cool faculty. Mainly it was focused around psychopathy and deception detection, as well as terrorism studies. So I had a very big range of things that I got access to and I got to be a part of, really cool projects. And all of these things were in essence just a foundation of how to provide social services. And so coming back to Canada after school was done, I really wanted to look at how to implement all of those different research and all those different areas into applicable things.
Excellent. Well, that's great. I'm sure that's been a wonderful preparation for this role. So I'm just curious to know, can you tell us what brought you to the men's issues side of things within psychology? There's many directions you can go with a psychology degree, and so what was it that made you take an interest in men's issues?
Sure, of course. I took a course way back in group counseling, and one of our projects that we worked on was finding a different population that you wanted to, represent and talk about the issues that related to them. So mine was boys and men, and I learned about the different discrepancies that I found. For example, the higher suicide rates and higher incarceration rates, higher homeless rates for men in general, not just in Canada, but all over the world. And so these were kind of things that propelled me to look more into the area and look for what services were being offered. And around the world, there was a general trend that because we have, so much of a gap when it comes to services in other areas, in this area specifically, men seem to have a little bit of a shortcoming.
Yes, that's right. There are mental health and other social services available for all people in the community, and there are the same available specifically for women in many locations, and not as often social services specifically for men. So I think that's a very good point that you raise. Can Can you tell us about the approach that you're taking to the position of executive director here in Vancouver? Like maybe the work that you're doing with our volunteers, the coordination, the fundraising, and what direction you would like to take the organization in?
Sure. There are really three prongs to what we're hoping to accomplish at CCMF Vancouver. The first one is to raise awareness. By doing that, we hope to increase our range within the community, developing organizations, relationships with businesses, institutions, educational systems, anyone that we can kind of grow and become a little bit more meshed within the Vancouver population, get to know the people a little bit better. That's the first prong of what we'd like to do. And so we're doing this in a variety of ways. We are connecting with undergraduate and graduate universities to secure practicum opportunities for students. We are joining with local businesses to create awareness campaigns and sponsorships. And so we're trying to do a few different things to just try and get to know Vancouver, the lay of the land, a little bit more.
That's great. That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about this physical center that we're trying to fundraise for here in Vancouver? If we're successful in raising that money and opening the center, what kind of services would it deliver to men in this community?
Sure. So the services that we hope to continue to provide for Vancouver's population and surrounding areas as well are our counseling programs, our men's support programs, our domestic abuse support programs, and our legal clinics. Traditionally, in the other areas, the other cities that have Canadian centers for men and family, they're around 700 to 1,000 square feet, not large spaces by any means, but enough of a space where we can host support group meetings, provide a space for counseling, and just an area of refuge for anyone who needs it, and to kind of learn a little bit more about our center.
Okay, those would be wonderful if we can open that and deliver on all of those. And so I just wanted to ask you about the volunteers that we work with together. There's a number of people at CCMF Vancouver, and they have many different roles doing different things. Can you tell us about what some of the work is that each volunteer is doing?
Sure, yeah. One of the main goals that we had when we're starting this organization out on the West Coast is looking to kind of restructure our systems and create good foundations to how we want to run our programs. And with that, we have a lot of different areas that our volunteers really help us out with. One of those is program facilitation. So we have volunteers that help facilitate programs like the men's support group, the legal clinic, the domestic abuse group, which are all virtual right now. Another area that we have is our podcast. So, Warren leading the fire over here with the podcast, which we're really excited about. We also have the intake team. So all of the individuals that support our intake team, which work on a daily basis, trying to take everybody in and all the requests that we get, looking for services, looking for insight or any sort of help. They're their first stream, their first gate to help and share our services. The other one is grants. A lot of our income comes from donation and grants, and so we have a team of volunteers that help us applying for grants, looking out for grants that may be applicable to us, as well as reaching out to sponsors and funders to try and keep our foundation afloat and secure over the next months.
So many different roles for the volunteers here. That's wonderful. And we have one volunteer also on this call, Alex Ferrari, which I will definitely be asking you a couple things in a minute, Alex. I was just curious about one point you mentioned, Tai, which is the intake. Well, there's the intake of volunteers, but then there's the messages that you get from men in the community. So people reaching out to us and saying that they are in need of assistance, or they're going through a difficult time, or they're seeking advice or recommendations on how to deal with a situation in their lives. What kind of things have you seen since you joined in terms of what help men are looking for from our organization?
I think there's two answers to that question. The first we do get a lot of guys that are looking for support if that has to do with an upcoming separation or just inquiring as to what really abuse is in a relationship. Traditionally, we really understood abuse to be physical abuse, but now being able to really know the meaning of abuse and what it really means and all the different types of abuse there are out there, a lot of guys aren't aware of that. And so they look to CCMF to try and get a better understanding of what their relationships might look like, whether they're healthy relationships or not so healthy relationships. And the second, we get a lot of inquiries that come from actually concerned friends or concerned family members that are looking to refer somebody to us, asking for support to help their family members or somebody that they know.
Do you think in the latter case with the friends and family, is that because men themselves who are going through rough times have difficulty speaking up and asking for help? Do you think that there's a hesitation in doing so?
I think definitely. Traditionally, a lot of guys, they kind of fall under the tropes of masculinity and what that means in terms of not asking for help or not talking about your emotions and not going for places to discuss things like your relationship or your emotional well-being. And so for that and a lot of other reasons, we notice that guys have a tough time coming to us for help. But we hope that as long as we can provide a safe space and are continuously welcoming individuals and providing the proper resources, that we'll be able to reduce that stigma a little bit day at a time.
Yes, I think that is a very good goal to have. And I wanted to touch on just staying on this theme of, the struggles and difficulties that men are facing here in British Columbia. You are sometimes interfacing or speaking with other organizations, social services and nonprofits and universities and those kinds of things about men's issues. And what do you think is the reception that you get when you present yourself and CCMF's goals of raising awareness and raising money to deliver assistance to men in this province? Do you think that speaking about men's issues is it accepted? Is it welcomed? Or are people skeptical a little bit? Do they raise an eyebrow? Or are they more intrigued by the issue?
I think it's probably fair to say that no matter which side of the coin we're talking about or which circumstances we're talking about, whenever you're advocating for services just specific to one population, there's always an eyebrow or two raised, and that's fair. And so with that, it comes being able to know the real reasons why we advocate for the populations that we do advocate. And representing CCMF Vancouver, to me, that means that we are not just helping boys and men, but we are helping boys, men, their community, and their families, just through the lens of boys and men. So as in they're the gatekeepers towards the emotional well-being of their families, of their jobs, of their communities. And so by addressing the specific issues that boys might deal with or men might deal with, we really hope to create a better, safer emotional well-being for all people.
I think that's very well said. Thank you. Yes. And on the fundraising side, I know that we're applying for some government grants that you mentioned earlier. We're also taking donations directly from individuals in the community and businesses in the community. So how is this process going so far?
So this is a process that's pretty new for us on the West Coast in Vancouver, and we have a team of volunteers that are working tirelessly to attract businesses and hopefully accrue enough donations to be able to open up our center. It's something that we really are advocating for this year, and being able to partner up with organizations around the city and find a common goal in supporting our communities. We hope that we can find some sponsors out there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Sure. And why don't we turn briefly to our other guest on this podcast episode, which is Alex Ferrari. Alex, you joined us also relatively recently, within the last couple of months, I believe. Can you tell me a little bit about how did you find out about CCMF, and what was it that interested you in the group?
Hi, Logan. Let's say that I was searching myself to get some support. I am uh, recently became a single daddy, so I separated from my wife, and the child is living with me, with all the difficulties that raising a child by myself uh, is giving, right? So there is a beauty, but there are also many difficulties. And for that reason, I was looking for some kind of support, maybe a group support, even just to have a chat with somebody to share the feelings that day by day are raising, right? And I basically found very little on the Vancouver market. Uh, and when I came across uh, CCMF that was looking for volunteers, right? And uh, being myself in that position of having the need to speak with people about my big or small issues, I thought, why not to help other people that can have the same issues that I am having, or even bigger issues. So I decided to volunteer. I offered my time, and here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you. Definitely, it's great to have you on board. So I know that you're helping with the fundraising. That's one of your roles. Are you? Is that your main focus with CCMF, or are you looking to volunteer in any other programs or services as well?
Well, up to now, I am quite focused on the fundraising. The main reason is, uh, like every young association, of course, the fundraising has to be one of the pillar for the organization to grow and to be able to provide day-to-day services to the community. In addition, my main focus is to the construction industry, and that for a series of reasons. First of all, because I'm myself involved in construction, but not only construction is a big industry here in BC, and an industry that has a large population of men. Uh, During the several researches that we did with CCMF, it came out that men that committed suicide is a very, very high ratio Canada-wide, and the majority of them are somehow, well, there is a large portion in the construction industry. And that is why I thought the best way for me to help is to reach out in this large industry and not only to do the fundraising, but also to ask these corporates to let know to their workers that this association exists and which type of services are here to provide.
That's a very interesting point that you raised about suicide and men in the construction industry. What is it? I'm just curious. Do you have any idea why that kind of a lifestyle, that kind of an occupation would be putting such stress on a person's life that they would be going that going down that particular direction?
Well, let's say I did not do any study on it, but my impression is that uh, construction it includes every type of person from the high management with high studies to the labor himself, and sometimes I do I do see that construction it can be an entry point industry for many people, but it is also very much hard working. So it's very demanding, and at the same time it's very unstable. So the projects start, they require a lot of hours, a lot of efforts, and when they finish, and that type of instability, I believe that it has an impact on everybody of us.
I see. It's definitely a difficult line of work for many of the people in that industry, and I think that there's a lot of mobility. Pulling in workers from different regions in order to complete a project. We all know that there's a skilled labor shortage here in British Columbia, so they're bringing in people from many areas. And a lot of times they're not traveling with their family, they're just coming alone to work on projects around here. Um, just as a side note, I came to Vancouver in 2016. I'm originally from Ontario, the Toronto area, and I've noticed something about the West Coast here. The whole social fabric of British Columbia seems to be a little bit thinner, let's say, than in Eastern Canada. Maybe that has to do with historical and cultural and geographic regions. I'm not quite sure why, but there's many, many people living in this province by themselves. One person in an apartment, or they're living here and their family is somewhere else. They're in a different country or a different province or a different city. And we all know that social isolation is difficult and it's not good for our health. And especially during this last year with the pandemic and everything that came along with that, social distancing and those kinds of things, it's been a difficult year for many people in British Columbia.
It has been, and also looking at the statistic numbers, you can see that many of the ratios went very much up. You can see the suicide that went up. You can see the drug addiction that went up, and so on, right? So yeah, it is a tough time for everybody, uh, and well, we hope to be at the end of it or to be out of it soon.
Yes, I hope so as well. Um, we don't know how long the current pandemic will last. Hopefully, not another year, and hopefully it will be less, but we can't control that. So, in the meantime, the things that you mentioned, suicidal thoughts and drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and as well as depression and anxiety and those sorts of issues that come along with living through a difficult time. Um,
Oh,
if there are men in the community that are experiencing these symptoms, I guess this is a question for both of you, Ty and Alex. What would you say to them here? What would be your message if there are men out there that are feeling alone, they're feeling isolated, and they feel like they have nowhere to turn and no person to speak with? What would you say to them?
Alex, you want to go first? Should I go
well,
first?
it's up to you. It's the same. Uh, Let me start. Well, I would just say that uh, absolutely they are not alone. I mean, the numbers speak clear. Uh, all of us have problems, and no one of us is alone. We just need to find a way to be able to communicate each other. And I believe that what I is here for, and what all of us are here for as CCMF, is really to try to connect each other and to help each other, independently that someone is volunteer or is just reaching out. Uh, it is a two-ways help because to be able to speak with them, it's benefiting both sides, right? And that is why I myself joined and to be able to communicate with people.
Yeah, what you said, Alex, is absolutely right. And a psychologist that I admire very much, Dr. Linehan, says that we're all part of the same universe. And this is a very interesting time where that's very salient because this pandemic affects absolutely everybody all over the world. And with that, we can really understand how truly connected we all are. And because of that, it's very important that we acknowledge that we have each other and you have supports. And whether that is your neighbor or whether that is the organization next door, that's CCMF, or whether that's an old friend that you can reach out to. The point of this is that we have somebody, we all have a resource that we can connect to, and we just want to be one of those resources.
Well, that's great. I think CCMF is a great resource, and not only for you to talk to the volunteers of the organization, but other men as well. And that kind of ties into one point we could talk about, which is our weekly men's support group. So, Ty, do you want to maybe speak on this for a minute? I know right now we're doing this on Zoom every Wednesday, I believe, at 6 p.m. Is that right?
It is every Thursday at 6 p.m. Right, yes. So we have our men's support group, which meet up for about 2 hours. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer than that. And it's just a safe and open space for men to meet and talk about, what's going on in their lives, troubles past, present, or future, and a good way to connect with other guys, especially because it's virtual and you can do it from anywhere. I know we've got some guys out in rural Ontario, some in Saskatchewan, and then a lot coming out of Vancouver as well. So it's a good place to meet a lot of other people and sit in the same boat.
Yes, and I've been on a couple of those weekly group meetings, and the discussion is very interesting. You never know which direction it's going to go in. It could be one particular man telling his life story and what he's dealt with and where he is now and how he coped with things, or it could be a back and forth discussion about, how men are portrayed in the media, or, men's struggles being fathers and husbands, those sorts of things. So it is a very interesting group.
Absolutely.
And we also have a legal clinic for men that are perhaps going through divorce or they're dealing with family court. Did you want to maybe say a quick word about that?
Sure, yeah. Our legal clinic is an opportunity that we have through some volunteered time from some of the lawyers in Vancouver, that we're able to provide this service for any individuals that may be going through separation, that are looking to learn a little bit more about what their options are, a little bit more about what their situation entails from a legal standpoint. And so we're privileged and we're happy to offer this service free of charge through CCMF.
And it's great that we have that. I think that it's definitely needed by a lot of people around here. I think this kind of wraps up the main questions that I had for both of you. You've given a good description of your roles here with CCMF and what you'll be working on in the near future, as well as some of the things we're doing for men in the community. Is there anything else that you wanted to raise?
Maybe I can touch base on the counseling program and the addictions program.
Sure. Yeah.
So one of our goals over the next few months is to open up a counseling and addictions program with CCMF. So we're hoping that through sponsorships and donations we can create these programs and offer free of charge counseling services to boys and men, just to be able to come and deal with some of these issues that you had explained, like anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and speak to somebody like a counselor about them.
And so this will be a free counseling service for men and boys. How would that be different from them going to see a clinical psychologist that might be in their neighborhood?
Well, a few differences. So these would be a two-way street. So we would have practicum students offering counseling services. So these would be counselors that are at a graduate degree level, that are going to universities, for example, City University, Adler University. And the benefit that we have as a client is that they would be free of charge, and you wouldn't have to be paying the $100 or $200 an hour that it costs to see a psychologist, because these are graduate students. So we're hoping that we can, provide an opportunity for these students to learn from a wide base of clientele, but we can also provide a service to help people in Vancouver and the area access services that they may not normally be able to afford.
Well, I certainly hope we can get that up and running very soon. I think there'll be a strong demand for it. Alex, was there any final thoughts that you had?
Not really. Let's say that I'm very, very glad that CCMF came to Vancouver. I believe that it will be a help for a lot of people. Uh, Tai, you will be overwhelmed of demands here. I'm pretty sure. Uh, it is just, I mean, I personally myself really appreciate all of these programs, the current one, but also the future that you plan to open. I think that it will have a huge impact on the numbers that we can see. Um, and Wogan, as you probably know, there is also a connection between all the addictions that we see and the cost that these addictions are to BC, so to the province, to our cities. I myself have a master in business administration, and when I do see the amount of money that our community is spending because of addiction, uh, and having seen before the higher percentage of men that are inside these addictions, I can only think about, of course, about the lives that are impacted, but also from the province point, the economical help that an organization like CCMF can provide to the community.
That's a very good point you bring up, Alex. I think that it's hard to understate the importance of this. Like last year in British Columbia, there were over 1,700 overdose deaths in 1 year alone, and 81% of those were men, according to the coroner's report. That's a huge amount of families that were negatively impacted. They lost a family member, a loved one, and so although we label our group as being about men and families, men's issues, it really is for everybody, because when a family member dies, it affects everyone
Exactly.
close to them. So it highlights the importance of talking about these things, of seeking help when you need it, and not being afraid to have these conversations. So
Exactly.
I hope we can continue to do so for quite a long time, and not just talk about it, but actually do something to help the men that are in need.
Exactly. And let me add that one of my brother actually uh, back in Italy was addicted to drugs, right? And in Italy, we have quite a large support. So we have a large organization that are supporting the recovery of addict people. And fortunately, well, it took quite a while, quite a few years for him to recover, but now he's having a wonderful life. He's fully recovered, already 10 years or more. He has a family. So he really restarted to live. He went back to life. And that is thank you to organizations that somehow are similar to the CCMF.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that story, that in the end it worked out in a positive
Oh,
way for
yes.
him. We hope that all the men that are dealing with such circumstances can resolve them in a similar manner. And I think the first step is always just you know talking to somebody about your problem. It's when you're dealing with addiction and mental health, it's very difficult for individuals to handle those on their own without any support, because they're complicated, they're difficult, they often run deep, they go back into your personal history, and I think that the more people you can speak to, professionals and non-professionals, to get different perspectives and get ideas and get resources, the better it's going to be. So Tai, I wanted to ask you a couple things before we close. One is for anybody who wants to volunteer with CCMF or seek support from our organization through the various programs that we're running. How do they get in touch with us?
Yeah, so we have a few different options. If you are a volunteer or you're interested in volunteering with CCMF, you can shoot us an email at vancouver@menandfamilies.org, or you can check us out at our website, which I'm sure will be pasted all over the place. We're always looking for volunteers to help us out with everything from intake to program facilitation to event management to grant writing. So whatever your skill set is, we've got a space for you at CCMF. When it comes to donations, we also have a lot of different ways that you can provide support for us. We have a crowdfunding campaign right now through Patreon, and that's one way that we look for monthly donors. Each of those monthly donors have a lot of different perks that they can get. For example, being invited to our grand open ribbon cutting ceremony, hopefully when we open up our center, or naming a room after yourself as part of your contribution to CCMF. We also have ways that you can donate as a one-time donation, or if you're a business that wants to sponsor with us or provide in-kind donations as well.
And we are a registered charitable organization, so they will get a tax receipt.
Yes, absolutely.
We will put, by the way, the links to our website and the donation page in the description of this video. Finally, Tai, I believe there is a comedy event coming up that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so we're working with comedians from all over Canada, actually. A few from Vancouver and a few from out east in Ontario that are going to be putting together a virtual comedy showcase as just our first charity event to welcome CCMF Vancouver to the West Coast, a way for everybody to kind of take a break from their day, get on Zoom and watch some comedy while donating money for a good cause. That event should be happening in the middle of April with a date yet set.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it. I think it'll be a great event. Thank you both, and I look forward to speaking with both of you in the future.
All right, thanks, Warren.
Thank you.